Hello, everybody. This is Amy with Ask a Christian, a small YouTube channel and Facebook page that is interested in authentic discussion with you about Jesus, about the Bible, and of course about the Christian worldview. Any questions that you have, you can send to Ask a Christian. Well, you can send to askachristianfriend@gmail.com or Ask a Christian on YouTube. I do check the comments fairly regularly. Anyway, I'm going to play you a clip here and then explain it a little bit. By the way, thank you so much for being with me today.
We by definition take ourselves out of relevance when our whole church and gospel experience revolves around a couple of hours each week.
All right. There is the intro, the clip you just heard from my guest this week, pastor, author, father of three, church planter, Shawn Brace. I found this guy looking through his podcast, Mission Lab, which is a collection of discussions kind of about what we're talking about today. So he's got a mission for real attractive community following Jesus. By the way, if you are joining me for the first time, this series is called Conversations Christians Suck At. And I'm concerned about how Christianity presents itself on different issues. We seem to be stuck some places. And I want to explain this podcast a little bit because usually I do video and today is audio only. Part of that is because when I was recording, Shawn Brace had a couple internet issues. And then I'm not feeling well today. So I've been kind of in bed for the afternoon, but had this queued up and did not want to go a day without it. So if you watched last week with Caleb Isley talking about the irrelevance of church, this is kind of a part two. I meant to combine some of these things together, but this interview was just too good on its own to just take a couple clips. So yes, here we go. Shawn Brace, he's going to introduce himself here and a little bit about his story, why he cares about the church's relevance. Shawn, I'd just like for you to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me about your background, what you do for a living or for kicks, and then how you can speak to this topic of irrelevant church, a little bit about what qualifies you uniquely for that.
Well, thank you, Amy, for having me on your podcast. It's really cool to connect with you. So my name is, as Amy mentioned, Shawn Brace. I'm a pastor in Bangor, Maine, which is way up, I think, kind of in the other corner from where you are, Amy. But anyway, I pastored here for 10 years. I'm originally from this area, the New England area. Have a heart for ministry. I have a heart for the gospel. So yeah, I've grown up in a context that has been very secular. Having grown up in New England, New England is the least religious region of the United States. So Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, these are generally statistically the least religious states in America. So that's kind of the context that I have found myself in. So what happened was, and this speaks especially to, I think, what you're getting at, about 6 years ago, my own ministry kind of transitioned from being a little bit more insular and inward looking, inward focused, just kind of like going through the motions, maintaining the status quo, to really wrestling with what it means to be a pastor and a missionary and a leader and a follower of Jesus in a highly secular context. And that just completely shifted my whole paradigm of what it means to be the church, what it means to, quote unquote, do church. So I've done a lot of wrestling with that, started podcasting on it, just finished a book that will be coming out soon on that. And really what we discovered is that the church traditionally And I'm speaking within a Seventh-day Adventist context, but I would say just maybe in the broader context as well. But a lot of churches historically, traditionally, are simply not really answering questions that people in the broader culture are asking. And so I kind of really came to some eye-opening discoveries along the way about how we need to kind of engage the culture on its own terms, while maintaining this really strong commitment to our theological vision and understanding. And what I like to tell people is that I am committed to Christian orthodoxy. And I used to say, but I engage like contextually when it comes to ministry. But then I realized I need to say and rather than but. Like I am committed to Christian orthodoxy, and as a result, I want to engage culture on its terms, because that's what the gospel implicitly does. And I'm sure we'll get into that more as we move forward.
All right. If you're just joining us, thank you so much. And I do see your comments. Yes, it's audio only today. Your screen's not messed up. I mentioned in the beginning, not feeling so hot today. So thank you so much, Shawn, for that introduction. I recorded this interview earlier, and Shawn's got a lot of cool stuff to say about what is irrelevant about the way we do church. But as you heard him, just to recap, he's living in one of the least church places in the U.S. And I'm here in the Bay Area, California, and city-wise, this is also a pretty disinterested in church kind of place. But like Shawn said, this is not because we are dealing with people who are any less spiritual or any less curious or any less like into thinking about God stuff. Like there's some real depth in a lot of the people that I've talked to here in the Bay Area. But religion for them has been trying to coerce them or tell them answers to questions they just do not have. So they're just uninterested in the way we do church. And that's why this is Conversations Christians Suck At. So anyway, we haven't been great at connecting, Shawn says. And we've been answering questions that people are not asking, which is boring and even kind of rude if you think about it. All right. So this, by the way, this interview is shorter than other ones I've done. My next question for Shawn takes up, I think, probably the bulk of the interview, maybe 12 minutes or so. But the question is, what is irrelevant about the way we do church? Like, why isn't it working? So let me hit this play. I want to know from your perspective, what are the things that we're doing right now, both in your denomination, just kind of widely as Christians, that are irrelevant to the culture? What do you think your top?
I mean, man, where could we begin? Yeah, I don't want to, of course, like just pile on and be overly critical of my faith community. There's a lot of good things that we do, and I also maybe would just maybe provide a little nuance, and that is, and maybe we'll get into this a little later as well, but I want to make sure that we don't like sort of just sell ourselves out to relevance, so to speak, because we could chase after, it could change every day if we're just trying to be relevant. And I know you agree with that and are all about that, but there's two extremes, where there's the extreme where we are so committed to the past that we refuse to kind of contextualize our theology or our understanding of God. The other extreme, of course, is that we just sell out to relevance and we lose our grounding. I was reading an author recently named Leslie Newbegin, and he was talking about we need to be open-minded, but we can't have both ends open. We because just things will just sail right in and right out. But so with that being said, as I think about the things that kind of make me a little frustrated and cringy, I would say that first of all, and this has been a huge burden of mine, and kind of just like my hobby horse, is I think to a large extent part of our whole paradigm is challenged because we have sort of made church centered around this one program we put on, every weekend, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, and sort of all of life revolves around that program that takes place in that building once a week. And maybe this is a little outside the box, and some people listening might be a little surprised by what I mean, because sometimes when we think of relevance, and being relevant to people in our context, we think of, how to put on the best, worship service or whatever. And I'm not denying the place for that. But really, we by definition take ourselves out of relevance when our whole church and gospel experience revolves around a couple of hours each week. And so we have to realize that, there's 168 hours in the week, and we are not relevant for 166 hours if our whole imagination and our whole vision revolves around, putting on a program once a week in a building. So that's the first thing. And I think most people probably don't think about that sort of thing. A lot of people, again, when they think about being irrelevant, they think about the music we play or the clothes we wear or the sermons we preach. And again, those things, I'm happy to address those, but that's such a small little piece of the puzzle that usually I find kind of turns into the whole puzzle. And so when we get our eyes off of the once a week program kind of paradigm, I think we'll be able to step into greater relevance when we recognize that the 166 hours are more important than those 2 hours. So I don't know. That's number one. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. I want to chime in for a second.
Yeah, please do.
For joy and agreement, we think about that. We put time and effort into programming, but your programming can be spot on. You can be the best, but you're still not appealing to everybody. I mean, I like bluegrass and R&B, but I don't care how great your contemporary Christian tunes are. If I don't understand the message, your words sound not only alienating, but kind of creepy sometimes. And so I don't care how good your music is. If I'm not bought into the mission, the whole thing, it doesn't make sense. And conversely, if I am bought into the mission, then I can overlook a whole ton of other stuff. So the program is just meh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would maybe even take a step back and say, never mind if I do or I don't like your worship service or your music. The reality is that in my context, and likely yours, and where you live, 99.999% of the people are not even going to hear that music anyway. They're not stepping through our doors. They're not coming to our buildings because, one, they probably don't even know we exist, and number two, even if they do, there's just not a high likelihood that a random stranger, it happens, don't get me wrong, it happens, but there's not a high likelihood that a random stranger is going to show up to a strange building at a strange time in a strange place and step through our doors. So it doesn't matter what music we're playing, it doesn't matter what we're wearing, it doesn't matter how good the preacher is. We can do all that, and that's fine. I think we have to do our best when we are together, but the reality is just people are not showing up. So in other words, we have to take church outside the walls, and I don't mean church as in put on a program outside the walls. I mean live life as the body of Christ is supposed to live, rather than thinking about program-centric types of church.
Wow, just to recap, that was, I think, his big, what do you call it? Soapbox. Yeah, his big soapbox. He talks about it too in his podcast, Mission Lab. But that was a pretty interesting thing for me to realize that like you could make your 2-hour service at church super relevant. You could make, the sermon could be like a TED talk and the music could be wonderful and all those things. But if you are not in the lives of people in your community, you are still irrelevant. I don't care how relevant you are for those 2 hours. You have 166 other hours where nobody's thinking about you or your mission. You're not a church. You are a program. You are not a church. So what is happening outside of those 2 hours? And how can we step up our game, my friends? All right. So there's that recap. I'm asking Shawn, what are some other things not working for our church culture? Is it just that or what else? And he's got a couple other ideas.
Yeah. So I would say maybe just generally and broadly speaking, again, I kind of alluded to it before, but just this allegiance to, and maybe even I would say like a moral allegiance to this maybe staunch traditionalism. And again, that takes place not just on a Saturday or Sunday morning and how we worship, but sort of, all of life, where we are so devoted to what I think Jesus would call the traditions of man that we have a hard time entering into life with people and truly engaging with them on their terms. And so whether it's having to do with popular culture or again, how we put on our programming, there is an important place for being able to connect with people free from all the trappings that would be distracting from the gospel. I think the balance that I try to maintain in the new book that I just written that will be coming out. I have a chapter called the Same but Different. So that's kind of the tension that I think religious movements have to find the balance. In order for a religious movement to be successful, it has to be enough alike the surrounding culture so that people don't think they're just crazy, weird, cultish people. But it has to be enough different as well so that people are like, okay, there's something that is different about them that would lead me to want to join them. Because if it's just all the same, people would be like, okay, what's the point in joining them if it's just more of the same of what I'm used to? So my argument, of course, is that we need to, on the one hand, be the same in the sense that we need to engage the culture on its terms, while at the same time being different in the way we love, because that's what ultimately separates, the Christian message and life from all other worldviews is the way we love people. So as you kind of mentioned a little bit ago, loving well is always relevant. It's always present truth, to use a term that some of us might be familiar with. So that's the way we're different, is by the way we love each other. And we maintain a kind of gospel allegiance that is uncompromising. So that'd be the second thing that I would just point out. And then I would say the third thing that's kind of related to it is, I would say maybe I would call it, and this has all sorts of baggage and negative connotations, but I would say just in general, kind of the Phariseeism that is sort of endemic to much of our Christian life and approach. And, that has all sorts of implications, stemming from, the word Pharisee literally meant separatist. So somebody who removed themselves from the, dirty, unholy people. So our inclination to remove ourselves from social contact, and sort of like come to us mentality, like you can come find us. The assumption, of course, is that you have to be kind of cleaned up before you come to us. So that sort of spirit of like removing ourselves from people, when the gospel fundamentally, sends us to people, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. John says about Jesus, and I love how the Message puts it. It says the word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. So we need to be in life with people rather than removing ourselves from people. So that's the kind of the first way that we kind of live out this Phariseeism, and I include myself in this because I think it's all of us struggle with it. But just secondly, we stand in judgment of people. We have a spirit of self-righteousness. We have a spirit of fear, right? I mean, all of this goes into it, and we just have this spirit of merit-based kind of religion. And very few of us will actually express this or even consciously be aware of it. But I've learned over the last 5 years, I felt like a pretty good theoretical grasp of the gospel, but then I came face to face with the reality that maybe I don't as much as I thought I do, because there's lots of things that I feared, and I kind of felt like if I go there, then I'm kind of stepping outside of the gospel. And the reality is, Paul says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And so I don't need to fear corruption. I don't need to fear, that I'm going to be, deceived. That's a big emphasis in kind of my faith community. Like, oh boy, you're going down the slippery slope to deception. And it's like, you know what? My security is in Jesus. I don't have to fear that. Yes, I want to be, always, wise and so forth, but I don't need to fear being deceived, because my security does not come from being right. So anyway, I could go on and on for days on these things.
I almost wanted him to go on for days, but again, our point in these conversations is not to rip the church apart, not to rip Christianity apart. Just kind of prod where the pain points are so we can do better. So just a recap of what Shawn was saying is that in addition to being irrelevant because we're only with people kind of a couple hours of a program a week, we're not really doing life with people. He said that our traditions can get in the way, that just how we've done things the same way over and over. We're not giving a whole lot of room for meeting people where they are in a very different life and time and lifestyle. And then he talked about being the same but different, especially when it comes to love, looking like, doing life with the people around us, but loving really, really well. And a funny thing to me was that while I was doing this interview with this man, I got a text from my friend, and the text was about all of the idiots who were not getting a certain health procedure. So it made me laugh like during the thing, because we're talking about loving differently. Like, guys, if we're calling people idiots, that's probably an indication that we're not really rising above. So anyway, yes, friend, I'm calling you out if you watch this later. We've talked about it. It's a reaction, right? It's how we are dealing with the stress around us. So it's not really a call out. It's just like, yeah, let's think about it. And then last, he was talking about how church folk seem to remove themselves from people more than going to people with that loving gospel message. And if we're claiming that we're living like Jesus is our example, he apparently, according to scripture, left his throne in heaven to come hang out with us. He didn't need to be separate from us. And so I like that call for us to do the same. All right, we're wrapping up here. Thanks so much for joining me thus far. Just got another question for Shawn about what it looks like to love well, and then a little information on him. So thanks for joining me. Stand by for the final bit of this. And just want to let you know, next week, I do have a conversation about marijuana, focusing especially on medical marijuana, but as it is such an interesting topic, I think it might grow a little bit as well. So here's the last question with Shawn.
Shawn, I want to go back to a comment you made about our goal being to love well. And I'm hoping that you can give me some examples. What does that look like? What is a Christian community or a person individually? What does that look like? Give me some examples.
Yeah, I'll give you a really quick, easy example. And it's just one that is fresh on my mind because I can look out my window. And I share these, any of these stories, not because I feel like I've arrived or I've really perfected the art of living well, but it's just a quick, easy example. So we have a neighbor who lives across the street from us, who is about 82, 83 years old. And he's kind of a cranky, old, curmudgeonly guy who's very opinionated, and he's very independent spirited. But my wife and I, we made it a mission to just love him. And so, he's a single man that lives by himself. He has lots of health issues, but we've just committed ourselves to him. And if he needs help, which he needs a lot of help, but he's one of these guys who hates to ask for help. He doesn't want charity, but we've just committed ourselves, because one of kind of the ways I related to this whole idea is that if he was literally my grandfather living right there across the street from us, or he was my father, how would I treat him if he was that way? And so I realized that, that would mean that we're going to look out for him when he needs a ride to the hospital, because he has kidney problems, so he has dialysis three mornings a week. So we're going to give him rides to dialysis. It means that we're going to have a standing invitation for him to come over and have supper with us. It means that we're going to take his trash out. It means that, a few years ago for Thanksgiving, we decided to stop spending Thanksgiving with my family, and we were going to be family for other people in our community who didn't have family. And so it meant he was over to our place for Thanksgiving. So that's what it looks like. It looks like committed, long-term, intentional, deliberate, care and concern for somebody. Not that we're perfect, and not that we're always there every time he calls, because, we travel more than we probably should. But, when we're here, we're there for him, and we want to be in his life. And, there's times I mean, not to get too graphic, but like literally, I have to change him sometimes because he's at a place where he's not able to do that. And so, it's not always pretty, and it doesn't show up on the pastoral stat sheet, but that's just who God has called us to be. And it's not just like once a week, people walk into our church building and we're nice to them. That's good. That's important. But it's like, what does this look like, on Sunday morning, on Tuesday night, on, Wednesday afternoon? That's what it means to love well. Again, we have a lot of work to do in this area, but, and that's just one person. We're trying to live our lives that way with those that God has placed in our circles. And I don't know, that's just an easy, quick example.
Wow. I wanted to say this because when I hear about how this man is loving his neighbor, it seems a little involved for most of us. And I was thinking and praying about this. Like, yes, we absolutely will get to that point, I believe, as God unleashes his supernatural love on us. But I want to say this. I don't think you have to start there. Like, don't think that you have to start wiping your neighbor's butt, because there's little things you can do. And here's how the Holy Spirit works. As you start to follow, as you start to tune in, doing something simple like dishes when you don't feel like it, or bringing somebody's trash up, or checking in on them, you form a loving relationship. The Holy Spirit continues to prompt you, and your love actually grows. You become a conduit for God's supernatural love. You become a better person by stepping forward in faith and a lot of that. So please don't listen to Shawn's story and think like, I'm not signing up for Christianity. This is not the kind of church. Like, I just want the regular church where people stay on their side and I stay on my side. I know. We really all feel that way. It's not just you. So this is not a guilt trip from Shawn, but yeah, let's just be purposeful about what we can do and say, God, we don't like our curmudgeon-y neighbor, but please open up our hearts to do a better job at loving.
If Christianity is going to gain market share, I love marketing. Christianity is going to show up in the community once again, say in 2030. What are the things that we're going to have to change to answer society's questions, to be there? Like, what do you see needs to happen if we're going to have this revolution that we're always praying and hoping for?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, not to have, utter a cliche, but it starts, number one, with us really understanding and embracing the gospel, the good news about God's boundless love in Christ, and the reality of our value and belovedness, and the reality of our standing with God, that we are accepted in Christ, that we are valued by God, that we are worthy of love. So it starts with that. And again, sometimes I kind of jump over that and I assume that we all understand it, but anything we try to do beyond that would be sort of like a works-based sort of religious expression, even if it's good things like humanitarian work or, you name it, things that are a little bit more socially sort of relevant. If we're not doing it from a platform and a foundation of the gospel, we're only just hustling to kind of earn our own sort of acceptance with God, acceptance with society, acceptance with our neighbors. So we have to ground ourselves fully in the gospel. And then from there, I would say, and again, this may be overly simplified, but we have to learn what it means to embody the gospel in everyday life. As I said before, love is always relevant. Love is always present truth. And, I've been saying a lot lately that some people might hear this and they say, oh, that's so wishy-washy. That's such an easy kind of gospel, and we need the meat. And I just look at people and I say, have you tried love? Because it's not that easy. Like, this is the hard stuff.
Dude, this man is so right. Loving people who are getting on your last nerve really does take some connection with the supernatural love. Like, I know I can't do it on myself. I will sit seething in traffic, just like wishing that everybody would drive off the road into Nevada or something. So yeah, this was speaking to me in my heart. Love is hard and it is the most relevant, like he was saying. So yeah, just wrapping it up, traditional church isn't working because we focus on a program instead of living missionally with people. I hope you have enjoyed getting to know Shawn a little bit. He's going to talk about where you can get a hold of him. But just to reiterate it, he has a podcast called Mission Lab, available where a lot of your podcasts are available. Apple Podcasts, and where else? I know it's on Amazon and Audible. And he's got some books on Amazon. I picked up Pursued by a Relentless God, and if you follow him, you'll be able to see his book coming out soon on this topic. So, Shawn, thank you so much. I know you'll be listening to this a little bit later. Just really appreciate you, man. It was a great, great time with you.
I didn't ask you today that you wanted to make clear about who you are, your ministry, or no? Okay.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Well, how can people get a hold of you if they want to check out your upcoming book? Give me some of your details.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have basically disavowed social media, so I'm no longer on most of those platforms. I'm on Instagram, is the only one I'm still on. Shawn Brace is my handle, ShawnBrace. You can also email me at sbrace@nnec.org. And then I have a podcast that is called Mission Lab. So you can look that up wherever you get podcasts. Also, missionlab.podbean.com. And hopefully my newest book will be coming out soon enough. Just going through the final edits here, but hopefully by the end of 2021 is the year we're in, right? It'll be out. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Pastor Shawn. Appreciate this conversation and can't wait to reconnect with you. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Amy. It was awesome to chat with you. So, Vermont.
Right. We are done for today. I'm out from my sick bed and hope you guys join next Monday, same time. Going to do a little podcast about the Mary Jane and how church members react to marijuana, even the medicinal kind. If you want to chime in and chat, I'll be providing that link for you so you can comment. I'll put it in the notes of the chat as we get started, as I always do. So I'd love to hear from you. See you, get your comments, get your ideas. That's all for me. Thanks so much for joining me. And you can send any questions or comments to askachristianfriend@gmail.com. That's it. I love you. Bye.